Hello, everybody. My name is Adam Thorne, and welcome to the Australian Aviation Podcast. We are sadly a man down today, just temporarily. Jake Nelson, one of my co-hosts, is called in ill. This is a bit of an issue because he wrote all the news stories this week, so he actually did all the work. So now I'm going to get found out as not having a clue as to what I was talking about. Because, me asking the questions is quite straightforward. It's the answering bit which is difficult. But to help me get through this painful next 30 minutes, could be the end of my career, we have my reliable co-host, Chris Fenton. Chris, how are you?
I'm very well, thanks, Adam. And yourself?
Well, a bit nervous now.
Nervous?
I'm a bit nervous. I've not actually had to be, put the rubber gloves on and get on the tools in a while. So can I still do it?
Yeah, of course you can. You're the man, the myth, the legend that is Adam Thorne.
I was going to say this is true, but I can't say that.
Now, quick question. How's the legs and the body holding up? For our listeners and our viewers out there, the man, the myth, the legend that is ran the Sydney City to Surf on the weekend past.
Yeah.
And you did it in an amazing time.
No, it wasn't that amazing. I don't even know. It basically what happened is, I'll get the excuses out here. I do kind of run a lot. I'm not a particularly good runner. I'm not particularly quick. I do run a lot. But I sort of injured myself. Well, I pulled some muscle the day before. But you can't pull out of a city to turf. You can't, unless you've got to do it. So I sort of hobbled around. That's one issue. The other issue I have with city to surf is because a lot of it's like they're fun runners. People run for a bit and then they stop and walk. And it's like obstacles in your way, right? So our fantastic HR person, Jenny, I'm sure Jenny will be listening to this.
Of course
She's
she will.
an even more keen runner than me. She's run lots and lots of marathons. And she was telling me yesterday how annoying it is. And she would be like, get out of the way. Like, she'd be like, and I was like, Jenny, it's a charity thing. You've got to be nice to people. But I do share her frustration because there's this bit, the Heartbreak Hill thing. The hill isn't very steep, but what is annoying is all these people stopping to walk just randomly. It's like when you get on a train and people kind of step on the train and stop. I hate that.
Or you're in a shopping centre and someone just stops in front of you with a trolley.
Yes. Get out of my way. I'm busy, all right? Don't you know who I am?
Exactly right.
Exactly. So it was like that on a grander scale. But no, I mean, it's a good, I'm being horrible now. It's a good event, the City to Surf.
So what was your total running time?
Oh, I don't know. It was like an hour and 15 minutes or something.
That's pretty impressive for someone that was injured the day before.
Well, it was all right.
Good job. Well done.
No, I did it. I did it. And also when I finished, because I live in Manly, which is obviously the superior beach in Sydney. We ended up in Bondi, which is obviously like the Povo one. So I ended up in Bondi.
That's where all those backpackers go.
Yeah, oh God, I hate those people.
Yeah.
Country's full. So I ended up in Bondi. But I'm not often there. So I did the sort of the Bondi to Coogee walk. I was hobbling at this point, but I still hobbled there, and then made my way back. All the beaches near Bondi are quite nice. It's just Bondi I don't particularly like.
Yeah, fair call.
And that was a massive tangent I went on there. For any aviation fans, you got nothing out of that last 5 minutes. I don't care. But before we steam into the news, I'm going to have to quickly work out what's going on this week. Talk me through. We are coming up to the Night of Nights, the Australian Aviation Awards.
At time of recording, 15 days away from the Night of Nights, the Oscars of Aviation, the Australian Aviation Awards, 15 days at time of recording. So it's fast approaching. The good news is there are still tickets available. I checked in with Lizzie and her team this morning. There are approximately 5 tables left for sale.
That's pretty, that's good.
Tables,
it's busy.
That's really good. So
have we still got that thing where you can win a chance to meet us?
We still have that thing.
I don't agree with, by the way.
Another 5 days. So any listener listening who subscribes to Australian Aviation that is Sydney based will go in the draw to win 2 tickets to the Night of Nights, the Oscars of Aviation, to join either Adam or myself as our guest on our table to the Australian Aviation Awards. So all you need to do is visit the Australian Aviation website, look for the memberships tab, sign up to become a member using the exclusive discount code podcast. Massive saving, and subscribe to a brilliant, worthwhile publication. And if you're Sydney-based, you'll go in the draw to potentially win a ticket or two tickets to join you and I on the night.
I mean, I've said this before.
And Jake, of course, because Jake will be there too.
He will be there. I've said this before. I don't think we should be what it should be is if you want to sit next to me and you, that's an additional charge. Like we've got we're the assets here. We just make money.
You're the asset. I'm just the sidekick.
But instead, we're going the other way, and we're giving something. I'm not a fan of this, but that's above my head decision.
It was above my head decision
Yes.
as well. But excitingly, we're going to be having a few giveaways coming up.
Oh.
Yeah, down the
Oh.
line. We might have some Australian aviation merchandise to give away.
Very
coming up.
nice.
Yeah,
Very
it's
nice.
pretty cool.
We'll make a killing, won't we?
We will.
Do we
We
going to do
will.
like signed photos and stuff as well?
That's a good
We
idea.
should
I'll
do.
put that.
We should do.
We've got a meeting tomorrow,
Yeah.
I think. A memberships meeting.
As long
so
as
we
we're
can-
getting a cut from that.
Absolutely.
Like, yeah,
totally agree. We should bring that up in the meeting. Good idea.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking my agent will.
Yeah,
be on
totally.
that. Now, talking of this, so basically, if you subscribe to our premium content, you'll be in the draw to sit next to us. But you should subscribe regardless of that,
Absolutely.
because we've just put to bed our latest print issue, which, as I speak now, is being physically printed.
I'm excited.
And will be like landing on people's desks, I think, from like next week onwards, and then we'll
Awesome.
start putting it online on the website too. I was going to talk to you a little bit about some of the things in there. The main thing that I've worked on is a feature on Max Hazelton. So as you may be aware, Max sadly died, I think it was about 4 months ago. So Max Hazelton created Hazelton Airlines, which is one of the top regional carriers in Australia. And eventually it became Rex. And Max sort of built this airline from the ground up, starting off working in agriculture and aviation. He pretty much created this in Australia. He was also the man that created nighttime aerial aviation, built this airline up. He is also known for an extraordinary incident when he was 27, when his plane crashed in the middle of the Blue Mountains. And he crashed in the mountains, and he was in the mountains for 6 days on his own.
An amazing story.
One of the most incredible, if not the most incredible story in aviation history, in Australian aviation history. Now, at the time he crashed, it sparked the biggest search then in Australian history. Over 30 aircraft were involved, including aircraft from the RAF and also independent flyers as well. Hundreds of people on the ground were searching for him. And one of the most extraordinary things, I don't think this is being necessarily rude to say this, but after 5 days of the 6, the RAF search was scaled down. A lot of the searches were scaled down. The newspapers all but declared Max Hazelton dead. And I managed to get hold of some of the old papers from the time, the archives. And, it was all the headlines were like, hopes fade for 27-year-old Grazier. Even members of his family admitted they never thought they would see him again.
Wow.
As part of the feature I worked on, I interviewed John Sharp, the deputy chairman of Rex, who obviously alongside working with Max's later days was a good friend of his. And he told me that actual memorial services were being planned.
Wow.
So Max was effectively almost declared dead. He was written off by a large amount of people, but he carried on walking and he survived. So one of the most extraordinary stories that he managed to survive by his wits, follow the Cox's River out. And some of the things that happened, he had nails go into his feet. Obviously, his body was all ripped up. At one point, the soles of his flying boots fell off and he used his tie to tie them on. He survived off whatever kind of berries and stuff he could find on the ground. It is astonishing. And what's even more astonishing is he's had this incredible thing happen to him, which for anyone else would have defined their life. But he's obviously had this incident happen and then gone on to be one of the biggest figures in Australian aviation history, almost regardless of this. I called the feature the last of the Mavericks because he very much was Australia's Han Solo. He was that guy who did the impossible. So huge thanks as well to Orange Aero Club who helped me with this. There was a fantastic biography called The Hazelton Story, which was written, I think, about 10 years ago. So they managed to send me a copy of the book. So I was able to get some quotes that Max gave to them back when he was alive to tell his story. So I would say subscribe to Australian Aviation print magazine, have a read of my feature. If you want to find more about a genuine legend, not me, I'm not the man, the myth, the legend, it's Max Hazelton. So if you want to find out a bit more and you visit the Orange Aero Club website, you can go on their shop there and buy that biography.
That's brilliant.
So I would say totally, and huge thanks to the Aero Club. So if you want to find out a bit more. Elsewhere in the issue, Jake wrote a fantastic feature on the talent crisis in aviation.
Something very big and major happening in the industry right now.
Exactly. And so the kind of concept of the pitch of the feature is that we're now 2 years or so kind of post-COVID. We thought that this talent crisis would be something that would pass in 6 months to a year. It's still very much there. So he's spoken to a lot of key figures in the industry and has really looked at kind of like what are the causes of this talent crisis, what are the effects of it kind of day to day, and, you know, what are the potential solutions. So for anyone that works in the industry, it's a really, really, really good read. Hannah Dowling, who was the star of a previous season of this show, she's written a very good feature looking at electric aviation in Australia. Are we ahead of a curve or aren't we ahead of a curve? And speaking to some of the innovators there. It's a issue we're very, very proud of. And also, before I round this up, we've done a kind of a picture archive feature on the Hercules, which will in a few months' time celebrate 65 years in the RAF. And as well as that, a couple of weeks ago, Australia announced that we were going to be buying 20 more. And the first ones will arrive from, I think it's 2027. So my maths, which are notoriously bad, which is a danger because I hung the whole issue on this thing, is that so effectively by the time these new aircraft arrive, the Hercules would have been in service for about 70 years or so. And bearing in mind we're likely to get 20 to 30 years out of this new fleet, we're going to look at a situation where the Hercules will have done a century of service, which is extraordinary.
That's huge.
And one of the amazing things about the Hercules is that it's basically the same aircraft as when it started off. Like now, obviously, the inside, the kind of the avionics have got a lot better. They've got the latest technology. But basically, it's the same thing.
Yep.
In fact, the variant we are buying, which is the J variant, is the same variant we already have. So the idea that 65, 70 years ago, the people that created this aircraft created something so good that 100 years later it would still be in use, and in fact, not just like using your iPhone, used in war. You know, that's how good it is. So we've gone through our archive, which goes back from the very start of Australian aviation, picked out the best photos, and what we've tried to do is pick out photos, give you a flavour of the story of the aircraft, all the different variants, and as well talked through the kind of history of this thing.
Wow, that's awesome. And I must say, you know, I like to say to my customers or clients when I'm talking to them that at Australian Aviation we're 43 years young. So, you know, that's some really good history there. And being a member and subscriber of Australian Aviation, I'm very much looking forward to the magazine arriving next week and having a read. Because you may think that I'm privy to see that the blueprint or the initial plan magazine before it comes out, but I don't. I have to wait until it hits.
It's like you wouldn't ruin Christmas, would you? That's how I see it. You wouldn't ruin Christmas.
Very true. But I'm very much looking forward to seeing the next edition.
So yes,
sounds like an exciting one.
It's good. I'm very proud of it. And so you head to australianaviation.com.au. You'll be able to find out all the details about how you subscribe. If you want to get a copy of the physical magazine or read it online, it's all there. Okay, welcome back. So now going to steam into the week's news. And one of the biggest stories that was announced on Monday was that Qantas is kind of officially throwing its weight behind the Yes campaign for the Indigenous Voice to Parliament. So what it's done, other than sort of kind of formally backing it, it's put new liveries on 3 of its aircraft. So it's a Qantas 737, a Jetstar A320 and a QantasLink Dash 8, which will have the kind of official Yes 23 logo on it. And this comes after Qantas also took a decision to back the gay marriage in the plebiscite a few years ago. This was announced with, I think, Anthony Albanese alongside Alan Joyce at a press conference making this announcement. It is a big move because Qantas is arguably, and we spoke about this before, the most high-profile business in Australia, and you're literally going to have the Yes logo on the planes. Now, When we used to talk about COVID, I used to say, I'm not an epidemiologist, this is an aviation show. And so we're going to have to give another disclaimer. We're not a political show. We are an aviation show. What's your views on this, Chris? Because some people would say, good on you, Qantas, for taking a corporate stand on a big issue. Others would say that an airline shouldn't be getting involved in politics. Where do you come down on this?
All right. So this may surprise you to learn, but my heritage is actually Aboriginal. So my great-grandmother was of Aboriginal descent and married my great-grandfather and so forth, so forth. So I am of Aboriginal heritage and descent. Way back when. And we are an aviation themed show. We are not a political show. So my view is not meant to be of any bearing. But I'm all for the yes vote, and good on Qantas for standing up and doing that. What I do love about Joycey is he always stands up for the underdog. He always throws his weight behind the people that don't necessarily get the voice that they deserve and things like that. And Qantas isn't alone here. There's a lot of major Australian companies that have thrown their support behind the yes vote. And there's a lot of Australian companies that haven't come out against it, but haven't, they've said that they support it, but they haven't publicly come out and supported it. So, for example, the big four banks are all backing it. Some of the newspapers are backing it. And we've now got the Qantas Group backing it. So well done, Qantas. All they're doing is basically saying, we support this vote. They're not trying to sway people to vote a particular way. They're not swaying their staff to vote a particular way. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion. All it means is the head of Qantas has decided, I support this vote, and I'm going to show my support by whacking the yes logo on 3 aeroplanes that are flying the network.
So the kind of the other view would be that, and I don't know the ins and outs of this that well, and also as a POM in Australia, I'm not eligible to vote, right? But the view would be that from what I gather on like the polling, kind of nationwide, it's almost 50-50.
Yeah.
And some polls say one way and some polls the other. But it feels like whichever side wins this, it's going to probably be quite close. The argument would be, are Qantas right to take a corporate stand on something, knowing that potentially half their staff may not agree with that viewpoint? That's a curly question, but
look, I think they're entitled to take a corporate stand on it, knowing that half their staff may not agree with it. But let's face it, half their staff don't agree with half the decisions that the company make anyway.
That's a very good point.
It's I don't think they're losing any, I don't think staff will lose any sleep here. There may be a couple of conversations in the crew room or, around the bases going, oh, can you believe we're supporting this? Or can you believe Qantas is backing this? But that's normal anyway.
I think it is an important step because, as I sort of said before, like there will be richer companies, but then there is no more high-profile
absolutely
a company in Australia. So I think for them to make this move is whether you agree with it or not, is a very big boost for the Yes campaign.
Absolutely. And Qantas is an extremely proud Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander employer. They've got academies, they've got scholarships and programs set up for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people to move into the airline and move through the airline. And they're a proud employer of those people. So, I think good on Qantas for acknowledging those people in their workforce. And I use the term those people, but people of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander descent in the workforce. And good on Qantas for throwing their weight behind what they think is important. That's what matters most. They think it's important and they're throwing their weight behind it.
I think that's a very good analysis. Okay, welcome back there. So we spoke there before about Qantas backing the yes vote for the voice. We're going to return now to some more traditional themes, which I feel that we're talking about every week, which is the kind of stagnating domestic recovery. So we had this on Monday. I got a press release first thing in the morning from Melbourne Airport. And I don't want to necessarily accuse Melbourne Airport of any kind of PR skullduggery at all. But they basically sent us a press release that said that last month they had an all-time record number of people pass through their domestic terminals, which is obviously a very good news story. But when you broke it down, they were at 90% of pre-pandemic performance. And what I mean by that is that you compare July 2023 with July 2019, which is the real measurement, because it doesn't. Last year's almost an irrelevant. The year before was relevant. It's all about comparing it to 2019, and they said that they were at 90%, all-time high actual numbers. However, the month prior, even though less people came through, they were then at 94%. So it's actually gone down, right? Which is I know you do get fluctuations, but 4% is a significant reduction, and it buys into this idea that I say domestic aviation has not recovered fully. But what they also revealed is that international travel had risen to 92%. So you've got pre-pandemic numbers. So you've got domestic at 90 and you've got international at 92. Now, I didn't necessarily put this in the story because I'm not 100% certain, but I would imagine this is the first time that international travel has overtaken domestic in terms of its recovery. This is really, really significant because in the depths of COVID, or just as COVID was coming to an end, the view of the industry was that domestic would bounce back very quickly and very strongly because there was a pent-up demand to fly, but the international travel would struggle for many, many years. I think it was IATA who said that they did not believe we'd see a full recovery or a strong recovery until the end, I think they were saying, of 2024. Now, this is because back in the thick of COVID, obviously you had so many restrictions, border closures, and there was a worry as to whether anyone would be interested in flying internationally again. What we're now seeing is international has recovered far quicker than anyone would have thought, particularly in the last even 6 months, whereas domestic is stagnating. Chris, what is your view of this? Because all the people that made the predictions, idiots like me, got it very, very wrong.
Look, I think we were basing it on what we were seeing offshore as well. Domestic recovery in Europe and the US and Asia was a lot quicker to bounce back than international travel. I think what's interesting to note here is domestically, we obviously have the ongoing slots issue at Sydney Airport. We've got ATC issues around the country. We've got airfares that have taken a very long time to drop because airlines were capitalising on profits. Why not? The opportunity's there. People were prepared to pay, so why not? We're now starting to see that peter out a bit as well. And we've got a cost of living crisis currently happening as well as a result of everything that we've seen in the last couple of years. So I'm not surprised international has bounced back quicker, very similar to our Pommy friends. Have passport, will travel. Aussies are keen to get out of Australia at any opportunity we can. So, and international airfares have dropped quite a lot.
Well, on that note, the more obsessive followers of Australian aviation, which I hope is everybody listening, may remember that at the start of the year, there was a byline that appeared in Australian Aviation Online called Daniel Croft. Now, Daniel now normally works for our sister brand, Cybersecurity Connect, but because I went to the UK to visit my friends, he stepped in and helped me out to cover. Now, Daniel Croft, he's going to kill me for saying this. You may not realise this, but Daniel Croft is actually a rock star. Seriously.
He is, genuinely.
And he's also very, very good. So he's in 2 bands, one of which is very, very highly regarded in Sydney, and he will play all the kind of, he's not doing stadiums or arenas, but he's doing the biggest clubs, the biggest venues, and he'll do 1 or 2 gigs a week. And he is actually going to be next month flying to Germany.
Wow.
He's doing 3 weeks at a big German music festival. And I'll probably get into more than trouble with this. What they basically said is, we're not going to necessarily pay you a lot, but you can have free drinks, free everything. You get to, headline this gig. So obviously him and his friends him and the bandmates are loving it. And he, as you would do, called upon Australian Aviation's help to book the flights. And my core piece of advice I gave him, which I'm sure you'd have given him too, is don't necessarily believe everything Skyscanner and Google Flights tell you. Don't think that's the best deal. Do your homework, shop around, put some effort into it. And he managed to get his flight price down from what would have been about $3,500 to about $2,000. And actually, if you shop around now and you put some effort in, you can get pre-pandemic prices.
Absolutely, you can.
And one of the interesting things is when I flew back to London, see, there was a theme here. When I flew back to London, Daniel was covering me. I was paying a significant, probably about 50% more than I would have done. I was paying I paid, it was about $3,500 to fly out of season to the UK, obviously in economy. Now you'd be looking to knock easily $1,000 off of that. So prices are coming down, and quietly now, international travel is becoming accessible again.
Yep, absolutely it is. And we've got more and more international carriers returning back to Australia. We've got more and more international carriers up-gauging the number of flights operated into Australia because they are seeing record numbers of people wanting to fly. So we're getting more planes, we're filling them up, and in turn, it's lowering the airfares, which is fantastic. So,
one of the interesting things as well is that, again, we're not epidemiologists. I don't want to get into Australia's COVID, rights and wrongs of Australia's COVID response, but Australia's kind of strict response to COVID, shutting the borders and all of that. Obviously, that was a kind of global story, and I think that put a lot of people off flying to Australia initially.
Yes.
I think a lot of people, a lot of the POMs and people from Europe and America saw the stories of Australia's lockdowns and thought, you know what, that long planned holiday to Australia, I won't do that in 2022. I'll see how the Australians get on. And I think as we get into 2023 now, that news story has been forgotten.
Totally.
And so in a way that we were disproportionately affected last year, I think that's over now. I think people see that Australia's kind of open for business.
Yeah, Australia's open for business. Come on down.
Okay. And before we wrap up the show, and so we record this on the Tuesday for the magic behind the show, but later this week, we're off to the Gold Coast, aren't we?
We are off to the Gold Coast. They're letting us out of our... the studio is in North Sydney. They're letting us out of the North Sydney bubble and it's jetting us up to the Gold Coast. And I'm hoping the weather's warm.
It's going to be good.
Some warm.
It's looking very, very good.
It's looking great.
I would also say a huge thanks to the organisers of the Pacific Air Show who have bent over backwards to sort us out with interview opportunities, etc. So we're going to be there on the ground, talking to people, meeting to people, interviewing people. If you are listening to this and you want to come and meet me and Chris,
we're not giving away free tickets.
No. By all means, come up to us. You have to get past our security and our minders, etc.
Yeah.
They're the big burly guys with the sunglasses on and stuff. But no, if you do see us, come over, say hello, give us your feedback on the show or anything else that springs to mind.
Yeah, absolutely. We are there Friday, Saturday and most of Sunday because we are flying home Sunday back to Sydney. I will be in the Australian Aviation T-shirt or polo. So
you will know who we are because we're going to be kitted out in all the merchandise.
I'll be kitted out in the merch, but definitely come up and say hello to us. We love meeting you guys when we're out and about. Our most recent trip to Brisbane, we met some lovely listeners and had a great chat. But, without your guys' feedback and saying hello, this podcast's pointless.
Yes, exactly. So, come on over and say hello, and we'll give you a shout on the show as well.
Absolutely.
But for now, I think that's about all we've got time for this week. I managed to get through it all incredibly.
You did really well. That's why you are the man, the myth, the legend that is.
No. I've got away with it this week. But Jake, we need you to come back immediately.
Yeah, come back, Jake. Oh, well, on a serious note, though, feel better soon, Jake. We do miss you in the studio.
Feel better. But on that note, time has beaten us. So I will just say my goodbyes, which is just to Chris. Chris, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
And thank you very much for joining me. And we will be back on this show, Suntanned, the same time next week. But for now, from us, goodbye.
Bye-bye.